Hey everyone, and welcome to Ditch the Diets, an online summit for helping women break free from diet hell so that they can finally lose weight for good without all the mind drama. I'm your host, Danielle Emmons, registered dietitian nutritionist, and it is my pleasure to welcome Chef AJ. So welcome, Chef AJ.
Thank you, Danielle.
I'm so glad you're here, and thank you so much for doing this interview.
It's my pleasure.
Chef AJ has been devoted to a plant-based exclusive diet for almost 44 years now. That's amazing. She is a food and addiction weight loss expert and the creator of the Ultimate Weight Loss Program, which has helped hundreds of people achieve the health and the body that they deserve. She is the host of Chef AJ Live on YouTube and Healthy Living with Chef AJ on Foodie TV. She's also the author of Unprocessed and The Secrets to Ultimate Weight Loss and the co-author of Own Your Own Health with Glenn Mercer. I know there's more, but that's the gist of it. So thanks again. Welcome. And so to start off, I kind of wanted to just have you share your story, a little bit about you, your personal struggles, if you had any, and the journey of how you got to where you are today.
How much time you have? I wrote a whole, no, it's just because I actually wrote a whole book about that, but I'll try to give you the Reader's Digest version.
They can buy the book after, right?
That's and actually I have a YouTube lecture which consolidates it in 45 minutes. It's called From Fat Vegan to Skinny Bitch. But in a nutshell, I was born in 1960 to a morbidly obese mother and a normal weight father. And so I did have the genetic predisposition to become overweight or obese. However, as the saying goes, genetics only loads the gun. It's your diet and lifestyle that pulls the trigger. So I first became fat at the age of 5, which in 1965, there weren't too many fat kids. Let me tell you, there was about one fat kid in every class of maybe 40 students. And that was me all, through high school. Really, it wasn't until I went to college that I started seeing, other overweight people. So I was the fat kid. I wasn't really teased or bullied because I was really smart. I was teacher's pet. I was funny. I had a lot of friends, but at the same time, I didn't get asked to my senior prom because, back then guys didn't want to date fat girls. At least that's what my brother said. And it just sure turned out to be true in the 60s and the 70s. So I first lost weight the first time as a teenager due to a very extreme form of dieting, which I don't recommend. It's called anorexia. And I was hospitalized 4 months. And then, the problem with anorexia is at some point you either have to start eating or you die. And so once I started eating again, I literally couldn't stop. And then I became bulimic and I suffered from that for years. And then in my 30s, I had another diet attempt, Fen-Phen, which was a miraculous drug, except that it caused holes in your heart or your lung. So the minute it was pulled from the FDA, my weight once again came back. So other than at birth, there were 2 times in my lives only that I was normal weight, and it never was through eating. And so finally, in my 50s, I figured it out thanks to the help of the doctors at the True North Health Center, Dr. Doug Lyle, Dr. Ellen Goldhammer, and of course, Dr. John McDougall, whose work really made sense, but I never actually was able to follow it until my 50s. And then I finally, about 10 years ago, got lean, and I've been lean now for the last 10 years. It's been pretty much easy, effortless, once I figured out what I was supposed to do and what I was doing wrong. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell. And the funny thing is yes, I was vegan or plant exclusive all during that time, but that's not always a guarantee of slimness or good health because I wasn't a healthy eater. I was what they call a vegetarian, and I became vegan very young at 17 for ethical reasons when I was a freshman at the University of Pennsylvania. And just omitting animal products is not necessarily enough to be healthy or lean when all you're eating is junk, like Coke Slurpees for breakfast and Dr. Peppers for lunch, and potato chips are vegan and French fries are vegan. So I wasn't eating fruits and vegetables, and really until I was about 43 years old. So that's sort of the Reader's Digest version, at least of my weight story.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And so you said you were vegetarian or at the age of 17?
I was vegan. September 1st, 1977 is when I became vegan at the age of 17.
Oh, okay, got it. And then you discovered, how to eat more, a healthy vegan versus the
right. Because what happened is when I was 43 years old, I had already been vegan for 26 years and I was close to 200 pounds at that time. But more importantly, I had the beginning of colon cancer. I was
Oh,
bleeding internally because I wasn't eating any fiber. I wasn't eating any fruits and vegetables. So I started changing my diet in the direction of a health promoting diet. It was July 6, 2003, when I went to the Optimal Health Institute, and progressively it just got healthier and healthier.
yeah, that's amazing. And you can just see it in your skin. You're just you just look so
Well,
healthy.
it's the kale, baby. No, really. Thank you for saying that because I'm 61 years old, and it makes all the difference in the world, fruits and vegetables, because of the antioxidants. I really believe that because my skin is better now than when I was a teenager. And that's because as a teenager, I didn't eat any fruits and vegetables, and all I ate was a bunch of sugar. Sugar is very aging.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure. And that's another thing I know you talk about is like why do you think like the sugar or salt and like oils make make you eat more food? Is that
Well,
true?
I don't think that. It's a fact. I mean, there have been many books written about this. I can name three of them. One just came out, actually. The second book that I've read by Michael Moss called Hooked. But maybe it was over 10 years ago when Dr. David Kessler, who was the former head of the FDA under Bill Clinton, wrote a book called The End of Overeating. And then shortly thereafter, Michael Moss wrote a book called Salt, Sugar, and Fat: How the Food Giants Hooked Us. Now, Dr. Kessler was an MD. Michael Moss is an investigative journalist and Pulitzer Prize winning author, but both these books came to the same conclusion that sugar is addictive, fat is addictive, and salt is addictive. So they're addictive by themselves, but
Mhm.
even more so when they're put together. And where are they put together? In restaurant food and processed food, where they're layered and loaded so that most people can't resist them. And
Mhm.
the companies are looking to create what's called the bliss point, this point that just creates so much pleasure in your brain that people can't stop eating. That's why there was this famous television commercial back in the day for Lay's potato chips saying, bet you can't eat just one because most people can't. So sugar, fat, and salt are don't exist in nature, not in any concentrated form. There is no maple syrup or agave or any of that in nature. I mean, yes, there's maple trees, but not the way that we buy it processed and refined. So there's no refined or processed sugar in nature. The sweetness had to come from fruit.
Mhm.
There's no salt in nature. The salt is in green vegetables or in salt water, but there's no Morton salt or sea salt or Celtic salt. These are all things that are processed. And the fat, yes, there is fat in nature, but it comes in a very hard shell, like a coconut, like a nut. And these were things that our ancestors did eat when they found them. They gorged on them, but they were seasonal and they had to open each nut by hand.
Mhm.
And when you think about it, sugar, fat, and salt never appear together in nature in any product. Maybe in breast milk, but other than that, you cannot name one food in nature that has sugar and fat, that has sugar and salt, that has salt and fat, or that has sugar, fat, and salt. And that's basically what processed food and restaurant food is. So it becomes even more addictive when they're mixed. So
Right.
my mentor, Dr. Alan Goldhammer, who is the co-author of The Pleasure Trap and the co-founder of the True North Health Center, talks about sugar, fat, and salt, or sugar, oil, and salt, not actually being food, but being chemicals that are added to our food supply that actually fool the brain's satiety mechanism and perpetuate overeating. I mean, we know this from salt. Salt is one of the most powerful appetite stimulants. And if you go just put salt in the medical literature, you'll see that people eat about 11% more calories, and they often come from fat. So these things just perpetuate overeating. They cause people to have cravings, and they're not whole foods.
Right, exactly. And so why do you think that is? Like you would think, food companies or I mean, I know maybe it's like a money thing or they want people to gain weight. I mean, you would think
Well,
they
yeah,
would.
they want customers for life. If you look back at the history of the tobacco industry, they had a period where they weren't doing so well when the Surgeon General came out and said smoking causes cancer, and now you can't smoke in public anymore, and you have these little warning labels on the cigarette. They took a financial hit. So what did
Mhm.
they do? They bought up all the processed food companies, and they use the same science to hook people to their cigarettes as they do now to these processed foods. They basically work in a lab to create these science experiments so that once you pop, you just can't stop. So
Mhm.
that they're creating customers for life. And they do this with many techniques. One of them is called vanishing calorie density. So for example, take something like Cheetos. You could take a Cheeto and put it in your mouth and it will dissolve. You don't even have to chew it. If you think about whole plant foods like fruits and vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds, you can't swallow those whole the way you can processed food like a chicken nugget or a Cinnabon. They've
Right.
processed food, they've made it so that you really almost don't have to chew it, so that you get a lot more calories per bite than you would with any whole natural food found in nature or that you'd even make at home. And
Mhm.
so they do this because they want your repeat business. They're basically like drug dealers.
Yeah, that's terrible. It's terrible
Yeah,
because
it
there's
is
so many
terrible,
people
but
are suffering.
it's terrible, and they should have to be accountable at some point, and they say, "Oh, well, people have to have more willpower. We just create the product. It's up to you to, to moderate it." Well, if you're an addict, you can't moderate an addictive substance, and a lot of people have food addiction. And so yeah, the processed food industry is horrible. And once I learned this, I stopped eating all processed food. By processed food, I don't mean like if you take a can of chickpeas and put it in the food processor to
Right.
make hummus. I'm not talking about that degree of processing. I'm talking about refined food that comes in a can, a box, a bottle, or a bag. It's the only processed food that I've eaten in the last 11 or 12 years would be things that have on the label one ingredient. So for
Right.
example, tomato paste, it says tomato. On my beans, it says beans. It doesn't even
Mhm.
say salt or anything like that. Then I will sometimes buy convenience food. But I wrote a book 10 years ago called Unprocessed, and I made the case of what Jack LaLanne had said over 80 years ago, that if God made it, eat it. If man made it, don't eat it. Processed food is not food. It may be readily available, easily affordable, socially
Yeah.
acceptable, but it is not food, and it is deleterious to your health. And it's incredible that Americans eat something like 67% or more calories from something that isn't even food.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and they just can continue to struggle. I think they just continue to struggle and blame themselves when really they're addicted to these processed foods.
Right.
So how do you
Well, it's
think?
not anybody's fault.
Yeah, it's not their
Except,
fault,
yeah,
but it feels
it's not their
they
fault
feel
that they
like it
can't stop
is.
eating it. Right. It's not their fault, but it is their responsibility now that they know
Correct.
that these foods are
Correct.
addictive to stop buying them for themselves, for their family, for their children, and not have them in their house.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So how do you think people can like conquer their cravings and kind of manage food addictions?
Well, it just depends how long they've suffered and to the degree to which they suffer.
Mhm.
But the only thing that I know that has ever worked for any addiction is abstinence. Moderation certainly doesn't work. If moderation worked in our country, we wouldn't have a population of over 70% of the people overweight and over 40% obese. So
Right.
my treatment for any addiction is abstinence. But unfortunately, most people aren't willing to do that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They're not. Yeah, or they try for a little bit and then they just give up.
Right? They want
Unfortunately.
cheat days. The thing is you can't have cheat days anymore with food than you can snort days with cocaine
Right.
or scotch days with alcoholism. Unfortunately addiction is black and white, and people don't want to hear that that is the solution to their struggles. But the thing is complete abstinence is so much easier than moderation.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So I know you've talked about, or I think I've read it maybe somewhere that you've said people can actually eat more and lose weight. Can you talk a little bit
Absolutely.
about that?
Absolutely. That's what the whole chapter two of my book, The Secrets to Ultimate Weight Loss, is about. And this is from the work of one of my heroes, Dr. Barbara Rolls of Penn State University, who has done more research in the field of
That's
calorie
my alma
density.
mater.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic. Well, I
Mhm.
don't know if you ever had the pleasure of meeting her or taking a class with her. I know she still teaches there, but she
Mhm.
has a laboratory at Penn State where she studies human eating behavior. And one of the things she discovered is that human beings all eat approximately the same amount of food per day by weight. Now, that doesn't mean that I would eat maybe the same amount as an Olympic bodybuilder, but that most
Right.
of us eat approximately 3 to 5 pounds of food per day. The
Mhm.
problem with diets, other than they start with the first three letters being DIE, die, because when you're on a diet, that's what you feel like doing because you're not getting enough food. You're so hungry. Is
Good
a
point.
calorie density approach allows you to not only eat as much food as you're used to eating, these 3 to 5 pounds of food, but perhaps even eat twice as much food and take in half as many calories when you understand calorie density and the work of Dr. Barbara Rolls. So you actually can lose weight with a full plate and eat more and weigh less. But that involves not eating these hyperpalatable, high fat, pleasure trap foods like oils, like cheese, like chocolate, like sugar and flour, alcohol, and eating more of the calorically dilute yet more nutrient dense whole plant foods like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. There's a 40-fold difference in the caloric density of foods. So vegetables, for example, have approximately 100 calories per pound. Oil has 4,000 calories per pound. There's a 40-fold difference in the caloric density of food. I don't even consider oil a food. You can't make it in your own home. There's no fiber, there's no nutrients. So for the same amount of calories as a tablespoon, 1 tablespoon of olive oil, you can have like 2 pounds of zucchini. What's going to fill you up more? So calorie density isn't about memorizing calories or having to look up how many calories in a half a cup of rice or a cup of blueberries. It's simply about understanding the average calorie density of just a few food groups and making your choices that way.
And so how would you recommend like someone, I know you said it, maybe you didn't say this, but, or maybe I've read it, that if someone all of a sudden just stops eating all processed foods, how are they going to feel? Is it like there's a detox that they goes
A lot
through?
of people, it depends. Like, again, I don't know how long someone has used and abused these drugs that we now call processed foods. So some people may not feel that bad, but if somebody is really stuck in the pleasure trap and eating these as their primary food source and has done it for a long time, they might feel horrible for a few days, just like a person that stops drinking coffee will feel if they stop for a few days. There might be experience some physical symptoms of detox and withdrawal or emotional symptoms, crying. I mean, I've seen detox is a bitch. And that's how you know how addictive these foods are. That's why going to a place that I used to work, like the True North Health Center in Santa Rosa, California, where you can be under medical supervision in complete rest, can be such a godsend to people, because it's a lot easier than trying to do it while you've got the kids to take care of and your job and things like that. That's what I did. I didn't know about True North at the time. When I had to detox, I went to the Optimum Health Institute.
Wow. It's amazing that they have that. I didn't even realize they had places like that. And that's for
Absolutely.
food addiction?
Well, there no. I
No.
mean, there are places probably for food addiction. I don't think either of those places bill themselves as a place for food addiction. They just work beautifully for them because you're in a place of rest. You're not having to work. You're not having television and all these other distractions. There are doctors there to help you through these, healing crises or whatever. They're places of healing, and people go there for all kinds of things, from cancer to autoimmune disease to heart disease to diabetes. But a lot of people that end up going there do have these food addictions. And when you're in a place like that, drinking pure, clean water, getting adequate rest and sleep without all the stimulation, from television and the news, and being fed a diet of whole plant foods that is organic and is without chemicals and without oil and sugar and salt, healing can begin. But I wouldn't say either place wants to be known as a food addiction center.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for clearing that up. So I know there's like one thing that people, always are concerned about is how can they get enough protein on a, let's say, vegan diet?
Yeah. Well, has anybody ever asked an elephant, a rhinoceros, a gorilla where they get enough protein, or a cow? I mean,
Sure.
as a 44-year vegan, if I had a nickel for every time I've been asked that, I would be one of the richest people in the world.
Mhm.
I have spoken in multiple conferences now and medical centers for the last 20 years, including places like Kaiser Permanente, where I've spoken to 300 doctors. And I said, has anyone ever seen a single case of Kwashiorkor? That's protein deficiency.
Mhm.
And the only time a doctor has ever raised their hand was in a child abuse case where a child was being intentionally starved. It is impossible to not get enough protein if you are getting enough calories. And green vegetables actually have more protein per calorie than steak. So 100 calories of broccoli has 11.2 grams of protein, whereas
Mhm.
100 calories of steak has only 5.4. So
Mhm.
how this myth or misconception started, breast milk has only about 5% of the calories for protein. And if protein was that important to the human, why wouldn't it be in the most important food at the most important time of a human's life where they have to grow the most? So it's ridiculous to think you can't get enough protein from plants, because how would the elephant be that size just eating plants?
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. I just always hear that. I get that question. And even with just like regular diets, people are always afraid they're not eating enough protein. And most of the time they're eating way more than they probably even need. So, So anyway, yeah, that's such great information. So if you were to give listeners one single action today, what would it be?
Eat more vegetables, whatever your beliefs, whatever your diet. If it's too hard to give up sugar or all these other unhealthy foods, at least start adding in healthy food like fruits and vegetables, especially greens, to the degree that you can, and your health will improve, and so will your skin.
Yeah, I mean, look at you. You've got gorgeous skin.
It's the kale, baby.
Yeah. I'm gonna go eat some more kale. I thought I ate enough, but so I know you have a gift to share.
Sure.
Or a free gift to
I
share.
have I have a private group. It's called Feel Fabulous Over 40. You don't have to be female and you don't even have to be over 40. That's the name of the group. And if you'd like to try it for free for 2 weeks, there's a link. You can do that. We have support. We have accountability people. We have wonderful recipe and meal planning tools. We get together live every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Pacific time, where we interview people like some really well-known doctors, and you can ask questions. And it's a lovely group.
Okay, awesome, awesome. And we'll include the link in the email to that. And also, where can people find you? Online, on social media?
If you Google Chef AJ, it'll take you everywhere. And that's also the name of my website, chefaj.com. But if you want to find me immediately and daily, I do a daily broadcast on YouTube called Chef AJ Live at 11 a.m. Pacific time. And that's where you can find me. And you can ask me questions in the chat, because even though I'm interviewing a guest, I'm always monitoring the live viewers' questions and comments. So that's where I am. YouTube is my favorite place to be, other than home.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And thank you so much, Chef AJ, for doing this interview and sharing like such great information. I think people are really gonna, just love this interview and get a lot out of it. Do you have any final thoughts?
Well, eat your damn vegetables. That's what my mom said.
I love Perfect. I also wanted to remind our viewers to continue to tune in for more upcoming interviews. I think you'll get, not only some great insight and great information, but some great takeaways that you can, start implementing right away, like eat your vegetables. I'd also like to encourage you to join my free Facebook group, which is called Weight Loss and Wellness for Life, where you'll see me do weekly trainings on different topics related to nutrition and health. And you can also connect with others that are, on a similar journey as you. Thank you again, Chef AJ, so much for coming on and sharing your story, giving your insight. And thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you next time, and goodbye.